I would like to this is an online video which is going to give us a chance in the in Geology 305 Geophysics class to talk to some individuals who actually have had a career in geophysics or where they used geophysical techniques. I'd like to introduce for you Jeff Keevan. Jeff is a former student of ours. Jeff, when did you graduate from South?
2006.
2006. He's currently doing his master's degree at Auburn University, and you started there earlier this year, correct?
It's first semester, so coming to the end of the first semester.
Okay, good. So like everybody who's in Geology 305 right now, Jeff is kind of worried about upcoming exams and getting assignments done and various other things like that. And I really appreciate you actually taking the time to talk to us about some of the things that you did when you were in the geophysics career. So let's just talk a little bit about what it was you actually did. When you left here, as I understand it, you went to work for Schlumberger. Would you care to tell us a little bit about what that was all about and the training they gave you and how you got started in that whole game? Why, for example, did you choose that field rather than what at the time is the more traditional side of things, which is like the environmental field or hydrology and all? Why did you choose mudlogging and Schlumberger for geophysical stuff?
Okay. I just had a lot of kind of debt issues by the time I graduated from South.
Okay.
So I had worked environmental with Thompson Engineering for a couple of years while I was attending South, and I just knew that for where I was at, the money was not going to be, it was going to take me a long, long time to pay off my debt, so I decided to embark, and try my hands at the oil, field if I could get a job. So I started looking around. Schlumberger actually happened to be interviewing on campus that year.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You recall that? And went to the interview and got the first interview on campus. Did pretty well at that. They invited me for a second interview. Flew me out to Oklahoma City. Did well on that, and they offered me a job. So upon accepting the job, I moved to, upon graduation as well, I moved to Casper, Wyoming, and began, I guess, so to speak, my career with Schlumberger. So my initial training was just attending jobs, watching the engineers, what they did, but mostly setting up the jobs for them, so it's kind of a laborious process. But still, a lot of experience, a lot of good experience, a lot of things to learn. At the same time, you're learning kind of the programs that you would run to do your job as an engineer, which was the job I was hired on for. This is called a wireline engineer. What wireline is basically you're running tools down the hole, and you're recording information and sending it back up hole to your computers through this metal wire that we call a wireline. So you have different tools depending on what type of information you want to learn. I was myself. There are two types of wireline. There are open hole and cased hole. Open hole is when they first drill, and there is no metal casing in the ground, so you can run certain tools in. Once you put casing in, your open hole tools are no longer valid. You have to use a different type of tool, which is a cased hole tool, which can, more or less see through the metal, so to speak.
Can I just interrupt you here for a second, because there were several things that you mentioned here that I just want to follow on through before you carry on. You said that Schlumberger came on campus. Was that through the Career Center?
It was through the Career Center,
okay.
Yes.
All right, so you just did standard thing. You more or less applied for an interview, and they came and talked to you and all.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Well, they were on campus conducting interviews, but part of the process was you actually had to sign up through the Career Center, and then and you would get to interview that way.
Okay, good. You also said that you were hired as a wireline engineer with Schlumberger, and you were talking a little bit about some of the tools. Everyone in geophysics now has been introduced to the concept of SP logs, resistivity logs, gamma ray, neutron activation logs, and density logs. They're going to get sonic logs a little bit later on. Now, are those the types of wireline testing that you were doing in the holes, or were you doing other things?
Other things. Those are the things you would see in the open hole wireline.
Okay.
Like so when you first drill, because once you put the metal casing in, those
right.
tools aren't able to pierce through that metal casing. They're not able to really see through the metal casing.
Right. So which tools were you using through casing then?
Okay, so once you have casing, we would do things like perforating, which is the initial process of opening up the casing to allow oil and gas to flow through. You kind of do almost maintenance or kind of regulatory things with the case holes. You go to wells that have been in production for a while. If you're getting a lot of water cut, we have tools like with oil and water probes that could distinguish your oil and water zone. So it'll allow you to find a zone that's producing your water cut. So you could maybe plug that up.
Right.
And because it's expensive to process water.
Right.
With your oil. So things of that nature. Those were the majority of things we would see. We would also do cement bond models were very big things. So after they cement the casing, we would use sonic tools to determine whether there was a good bond between the cement and the casing, which is important environmentally.
Right.
They have to have those for BLM or whoever's regulating that well.
I wish BP had have done that not that long ago, huh?
That would have saved a whole lot of, although I'm getting a thesis out of it, but it would have saved a whole lot of hassles.
So that's okay. We'll talk about your thesis a little bit later on, and also. In terms of the actual logging, have you actually been on site when they have dropped the tools, the sondes, and pulled them out? Is that what part of your responsibility was?
It was, as a trainee, my responsibility was learning how to set up the jobs. Going to most of the jobs as a case hole you go to, there's no drill rig any longer, so you bring a crane with you, set the job up, put the tools in. But I've been to jobs as well where we were on drill rigs, and you would go up to the drill floor, help set the tools up, and then I would come back, watch the engineer do a thing, and try to figure out exactly what he's doing. For that was my main purpose, was to learn that one, but learn that job. But also I spent quite a bit amount of time, especially in Wyoming, a large amount of time. And 0-degree weather, cleaning tools, things of that nature. So it's it's not easy, but it's worth it. It was worthwhile.
You said at one point that you did this for basically an increase in your salary. Do you mind telling us what your starting salary was?
No. With Schlumberger, I started out roughly about $65,000 a year.
Now that's
maybe about 62, and we got a raise to about 65.
Okay, so all right, so 62 to 65. That's with the BS degree.
With a BS degree, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, because we often get a lot of questions from people that say, how much money do you actually get? And if you look on site, you'll find a wide range of things. I mean,
absolutely. So, but for that particular job at that time, that's what you had been looking at for a salary.
What were the hours like?
Strange. They were varied, but there were a lot of hours put in. Generally, if we had no job going on, I would come into work at 8 in the morning, and I would leave. I'd probably come in about 7:30, but I would leave about 4:30 or 5.
Okay.
If we had a job, I would. Sometimes I went out for jobs at 2 in the morning. I've left for jobs 11 at night. I've gone to jobs at 9 in the morning, and it depends on how many. Processes you have to run at the drill site. That would determine how long you're there. I've been at sites for 8 hours. I've been at sites for 4 days, sleeping in the pickup truck, eating gas station food. So
it's
so
kind
they're
of
very varied.
It's funny because that's one thing I think all the geology professions have. There are times when you have to get very familiar with who's got the best pizza at the local gas stations and all. So, but it doesn't matter if you're doing mining, metallurgy, or hydrology. Those things actually do become a kind of a silent bond between everybody in the field and also.
Yeah. I miss it a little bit. It was fun. So.
Now, you also mentioned, we'll come back to the Schlumberger aspect of things we have time of, but you also mentioned that for a while you were a mud logger.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after about a year, I changed over to mud logging.
Okay.
And so mud logging, I actually lived on a drilling rig, more or less. I mean, I would work 4 weeks shifts, and I would get off for 2 weeks. So it's like having a vacation after every month.
I can imagine.
But sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I would like you to tell us a little bit more about mud logging, but also explain to the students what mud logging is, because we've not talked about this in class yet. So,
absolutely. Okay, so as a mud logger, you're basically on site to produce a log of this strata you're drilling through, more or less. You're collecting samples about every 30 feet deep to the drill. You'll collect a sample, and you'll bring it back. You'll process it for a variety of things, mainly lithology. But you also, if you see any oil, you call that oil cut. We also have devices where we measure gas. I'll talk more about that in a second. But your primary focus is to get that sample, determine the depth that it comes from, and plot it on your log, percentage of, sediment it is composed of. So, and that's your main goals, to get that log, record that log as accurately as possible, and get that to the geologist in the office.
Okay.
Also, you're like you do gas, I guess quantitative gas collection, I suppose, or measurement, where you're keeping an eye on the gas that's coming out of the hole as you're drilling, and this allows everyone on site to determine, make sure that we're not going to get a blowout. That's to say that there's not more gas. There's not enough gas coming out of the well to kind of overpower the pressure of the mud that's in the well, and that will, quickly blow up your rig. So, as noted in the Gulf there.
Yeah, well, that does happen from time to time. Did you ever encounter any scary situations? Did you ever have to run off the rig?
When I was still in training, and I was working with a mud logger, and we were a particularly gassy section, and there was a point where they didn't think they could get it under control. Everyone literally had their car keys in their hand, was ready to go, and they were able, thankfully, to get that under control. So that was in Colorado. That's mostly where I worked, in the Piceance Creek Basin.
Yeah. So scary. Something to tell your kids eventually about is the time future daddy almost got himself blown up on a rig. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as a mud logger, our shack was generally located fairly close to the flare. So when you get this excess gas and they burn it off, you would see these just massive flames. It's interesting.
Well, if it's in the middle of winter in Colorado, isn't that actually an advantage?
I enjoyed it, because it gets pretty cold there. So.
When you first got hired on Schlumberger, I understand that they treat you pretty well in that company, don't they? Did they send you on for training, and where did you go for training?
Oh, so for Schlumberger, so going back to that, so I worked in Casper for about 6 months, and then I actually went to a school for my job. Mm-hmm. And at the time, there were 3 schools. One was in Oklahoma, one was in Scotland, one was in Egypt. So I actually got to go to Scotland. So I lived there for about 4 months. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Class was tough. I mean, long hours. We would start about 7 in the morning till about 5 or 5:30 every evening. But still, I was in Scotland. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
I can understand Oklahoma. I can understand maybe Egypt, but Scotland for Schlumberger? Where'd that come from?
Well, there's a lot of work going out the North Sea, and we were a couple hours south of there. We were outside of Edinburgh, but for some reason, that's where they determined would be a good site for their training. So.
Did you like Scotland?
I loved it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's good. Did you eat the haggis?
I had haggis.
You did eat haggis? Oh my God! That's the one thing I would not eat in Scotland. Is the haggis.
I had to try it. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you do it once, I suppose. Never again. I'll let you. You feel free to talk about anything you want to about your career and what you were doing, the joys and all that. But perhaps before we go any further, we should just ask the question that many students who might be watching this video a little bit later on are going to ask: is how do you become prepared for a career in either working for Schlumberger or as a mud logger? For Schlumberger, I guess that they're going to need somebody who's got some technological abilities and some mathematics, correct? So, which courses best prepared you for that? Which courses did you have to more or less bone up on once you got into this? What do you wish you would have taken, in other words?
Okay, for Schlumberger, say definitely, at least a strong mathematical background. Although calculus is obviously very important, and I think as you go further along, it becomes more important. But certainly trig, algebra. I mean, we were in physics were big things with that. So absolutely. Geologically, as with anything in the oil field, I think sedimentary petrology is a key. An absolute key. Would have loved to have like a basins course, a sedimentary basins course. I know we covered it slightly, but an entire course devoted to that. We have that here at Auburn. I think that's a good,
Who's doing that course up there? Is it David King?
Dr. Houdin, actually.
Houdin, okay. All right.
So, Dr. King's doing a whole lot of impact meteor stuff.
Right. Okay, so clearly the physics and mathematics is going to help and all. Did you take geophysics when you were at South?
You know what? It wasn't offered, unfortunately, and so that's I'm taking the class next semester here as a grad student.
Okay.
So as one thing, unfortunately, I've yet to say how applicable, although I'm sure it's very applicable.
Well, what I was going to ask you was that if you would have had geophysics, then I would have asked the question that I bet every single student who's watching this video now is going to ask: is it better to have a full year of physics or is it better to do what we offer here, which is Physics 1 followed by Geophysics as a replacement? So, in your
I would say,
sorry?
I would say Physics 1 and Geophysics. I
Really?
would imagine.
Oh, you know,
Yeah.
I almost thought you were actually going to say that it would be better to have a full year of physics.
No, I think Physics 1, Physics 2 gets more into the kind of, Einstein, Newtonian things. Physics 1 just covers the basics. I think Physics 1 and the Geophysics is actually a pretty solid combo for the oil field.
I think everybody who's in this class now is going to be pleased to hear that, because we have this the situation where we're offering substitute courses. For example,
Yes.
we'll offer geostats now for Calculus 2.
Yep.
And the question again is always: is this a wise move? How would employers view someone who's got one calculus and geostats versus someone who's got two calculus courses? So
I've never encountered any flack whatsoever about
good.
that. So it's I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Okay, good. When you were in the business and all, was there still a lot of demand for students? Were they going around schools and hiring? And what's your gut feeling right now, as of 2010, potentially coming off of a pretty intense recession? Is this a time to actually start looking for potential careers in the Schlumberger field of things?
They tell me they are, from what I hear from people, because the Marcellus Shale development, they're ramping that up in the Northeast, and for geologists in particular, and this is just if someone's considering their masters, I would recommend that if you have the ability, because of the whole factor of the geologists that are set to retire. All the geologists hired in the late 70s, 80s, but as far as service workers themselves, I'm told there's still quite a demand for that. So.
Okay. That's good. And as far as you know, the salaries are fairly consistent with what they were when you had the job?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Even mudlogging itself, actually, I made a pretty good living in mudlogging as well.
Yeah, was it about the same salary?
Generally, I worked a slightly different schedule, but by the time it was said and done, I was making, I think, almost got to 80,000 one year. Is very close. I worked a little extra that year, but generally I stayed around 70,000.
Now, how many years were you working in that business?
So right about 3.5 to 4 years.
All right. So in 3.5 to 4 years, you went from starting at around 60 to 65,000 in Schlumberger, and then you made it up to about 80,000+.
Yes.
All right. See, I've been doing this now for almost 20 years, and I don't make that.
Obviously I don't make anything anymore with this type.
Yeah, but you're a student. You don't expect to make any money. But I'm sitting here going like, man, I've definitely gotten the wrong business. Maybe it's time for me to take on a career sitting and catching little rock chips out of a hole and doing that. So
it was good while it lasted. So.
I can imagine all. Well, I guess the question now is, why did you get out of it?
Well, honestly, it was great for a couple of years, but there were a lot of long hours. There was a lot of being gone, being on the road, which was fun at first. But I'm, I'm nearing 30 now. Not married, but I'm thinking I would like to get that way at some point, and possibly have a family. And it's just not, the aspect I was in is not a very family-friendly, lifestyle, so to speak.
I hate to say this, but for anybody who's a geologist, I think every aspect of geology has issues where you're going to be working a lot longer and later than virtually any other discipline. This is not a 9-to-5 career. It never has been.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think anything will be within this field.
Yes, I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, I also kind of realized the limitations of the bachelor, and so that's about the time last year I started studying for my GRE and applying to grad school. But I appreciate my work experience that I had.
I was going to ask you that because, pardon me, certainly as a mud logger, you're not considered to be a geologist when you're a mud logger, are you?
No, they call you a mudlogging geologist, but it's understood you're at a technician level.
Right.
And I saw people that were, 50, 60 years old still that had been doing this, since their 20s. There's just not much room for advancement.
Right. And I think for anybody who's ever had any training, who's had independent thinking, for example, in terms of the for what you guys are doing at your undergraduate degree, after a while you tend to want to actually start being the person who's in control. This, I think, is true in hydrogeology as well. If you're working as an entry-level position, you're working with somebody else. There's not an awful lot of opportunity to actually go out and kind of do the report writing and all. So, I can see why you would actually want to kind of make a move in terms of advancing your career. And once you get your master's degree, you'll be in a much more marketable position. You could easily walk into the oil industry. And is that what your ultimate goal is? Is maybe get a petroleum position?
I haven't decided yet. We had a guy here from Devon Energy actually the other day, an Auburn graduate, and he's kind of recruiting more or less for for their company, and the opportunities there. But I haven't decided. As with I don't know. I think as with most people, there are a lot of interesting facets of geology. So
right.
I'm doing a hydrology track or hydrogeology track right now, and I kind of enjoying that. So.
Yeah, good. Is there anything else you want to say at this point?
You know what? No, just if you guys, or if you're serious and if you think you want to make it in the oil industry, give it a shot. I will say they test, especially with Summer J, they test you from the get-go. Like our interview literally lasted from my second interview in Oklahoma City lasted from about 7 in the morning to about 9 at night, and we had to be back at about 5 o'clock the next morning. So it's not a 9 to 5 career like you said, like anything is in geology, but it's worthwhile. If it's something you're interested in, it's worthwhile. It's a great experience. I mean, I've had some of the best times of my life the last few years.
Yeah.
So I will say that. And but anything you decide in geology, I think you're going to enjoy it.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, I really appreciate the time you spent with us here. I don't know. We may get some inquiries from students who would like to talk to you a little bit more. If you're at all receptive to the idea, do you mind? Contact? Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can you email me? I can give you my email address, or that's certainly fine.
Okay. We won't do it online or anything like that. But if anybody's interested, I'll invite them to give you a call. They might, if you can give them some pointers, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And we might actually have a follow-up interview. I'll ask some of the students if they have any questions that they would have liked to ask you, and perhaps we can do in addition to this. This has been a fairly short interview. It's only about 15 minutes long or so, 20 minutes long. And we can certainly add on to it a little bit later on.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, look, my friend, thank you very much for everything, and good luck with the whole thesis. Do you want to tell us very briefly what it is your thesis is all about?
I can talk about that. So we're basically investigating. Maybe I don't know if you've talked much about this or gotten delved into. It's a mixture of geochemistry and hydrogeology, but we're basically talking about with the influx of oil, maybe it's stimulating some bacteria growth in some of the coastal estuaries and bays, like Weeks Bay is one of our study areas, and some areas in Louisiana, Mississippi. So when it stimulates these bacteria, they're possibly causing reduction, which is just basically stripping out the oxygen out of these environments. And with this comes dissolution of maybe some oxyiron, hydroxides, and some other minerals that are holding some toxic elements like arsenic and methyl mercury. So it could stimulate basically a release of this, these toxic heavy metals. So that's kind of what we're investigating. Is it getting caught up in pore waters? Is it getting released into the water column?
Okay. And have you been to Weeks Bay yet? Have you been sampling there?
Yes, actually, we went about 3 weeks ago, stayed down at the Weeks Bay Reserve for a couple of days, took samples there. Wolf Bay, we went over to Grand Bay in Mississippi and took a sample or two out there. So, so we're getting some analysis done. Yeah,
we were just actually one of the students of geophysics and I were out coring in Weeks Bay this past weekend, taking some cores at that prograding spit just to the west of the Fish River. Finding out what's going on in terms of the evolution of that. So it's a very active place to be doing research right now. Just about half the world is down in Weeks Bay right now, apparently.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. Looking forward to the results.
Yeah, good. Well, keep us posted. And next time you're down here, come and give us a talk, okay?
We'll do. I'll be probably down in a week or two, so I'll stop in.
All right. Well, definitely come see us, but schedule a talk. We have, as you know, we have a fairly active geology club here, and we're always looking for speakers to come in and talk to the students about the research you're doing. Okay. So if you've got any data at this point, come on down and use us as a test facility to see how your project's going. Okay.
Yeah, sounds excellent.
Okay. Good. All right. Well, listen. Thank you very much. I will be in touch with you a little bit later on. There may be an additional follow-up interview. Once again, I appreciate you helping us out. Okay.
Yeah, no, not a problem at all. You take care, Dr.
Okay, you too. All right, I think if I push one of these buttons, we will disconnect here. Okay, you take care. Thank you again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.